All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Wonder webinar. We host these monthly with different experts talking about various topics as it relates to AI, the future of work, and how skill sets are changing along the way. Today, we are joined by Shaun and Lucian, and we will be talking about talent in the age of AI. As with all of our presentations, we will send along the information that we review today, and we'll also send along the recording afterwards. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button next to the chat feature at the top of the Teams meeting, and we'll be getting to some of those. Several of you had submitted some questions prior to the event, and we will be addressing those as well. Thank you so much for joining, and without further ado, we will get started. All right, so today we're here to talk about talent in the age of AI. So when we talk about talent, it's really shifted along the way as things continue to evolve in our ever-developing landscape. I'm excited about the experts that we have that are going to join us, and we just kind of want to set up today's discussion with a few items about how it is that we are moving the needle and what the changing nature of work looks like. So when we think about work changing, we've really gone from traditional roles evolving into elements being used by technology. Now, different lines of business have adopted at different phases and different iterations along the way. So as AI and ML came along, it wasn't only for IT, although they were early adopters. Analysts in different functions of business, including finance and accounting, were some of the early adopters, having high volume, high transaction work that could ultimately be done with the help and assistance of automation. HR has changed as well. There's been a lot that's had to go into understanding the talent and the development of talent that can iteratively work with humans and machines in today's workforce. So as they continue to find the right talent for the right job, as things begin to move and shake and change so quickly, it seems exponential at this point, talent retention becomes a little bit different as well. We're starting to see that traditional development work is also something that has changed with the advent of generative AI. So all of these different buzzwords and components that have changed the way operational efficiency is done have really shaped the way that recruiters have to work, the way that leaders have to hire, and the way that lines of business work together seamlessly through their systems, and of course, adding that human touch. We've all heard about the customer service agent changing along the way too. That was definitely one of the early adopters as it related to this specific field. Chatbots, I'm sure many of you have booked a flight before and tried to chat with an attendant to change your flight or figure out if you have credits left. And as those roles have changed, we've also seen that adoption has been across the board. Different geos, different organizations, and even shared service centers that supported these lines of business have changed by adding AI and automation to the stack. What comes with that is a new skills landscape. It's important that we notice that not only is the technology changing across the board, but what that does is it changes the way that we look at different professionals, what kind of talent we need, the type of skills that are required. In today's AI era, AI literacy, understanding it, just having a common grasp of what it looks like, whether it's interacting with Alexa or Google Home in your own house, using Siri on your iPhone, or any of the chat GPT prompts that have been launched over the course of the last 18 months. It's just understanding it. It's having a know-how so that when you step into the workforce, you are along the ride that everybody else is on too. The technical skills that come along with that have also evolved. We've seen a shift in traditional development efforts through to RPA automation, which is a little bit less code. We've seen low code and no code options available. And so technical skills are also evolving the way that we move towards this future of work that's AI enabled. Prompt engineering has really become special, and I'm excited about our guest today who's going to be talking about some of the shifts in that space as well. It's more important than ever to be able to correctly articulate what it is that you need and what kind of outcomes that the business is looking to have. More than ever, the skills required to be successful in business are those that are comprehensive, those that are holistic, seeing the big picture and then understanding where the minutia and where the dev work fits into that. And of course, human-centric skills can't be lost. In fact, they're more important than ever in the age of AI, as it's imperative that the human understands the outcomes, the ROI, the objective, and the flow of how work is conducted today. So we're starting to see these skills emerge. They've always been important, but they have a finer point when it comes to recruiting in today's age. Now, several industries are impacted by AI, right? And not only are we seeing, some of the technology sectors, which is the obvious choice, several rounds of funding have gone into new .ai companies, and there's been kind of a clamor in the market for different organizations that are claiming to have AI capabilities and a new way to do business. Well, what does that mean? We have to get smarter in business to understand the vendor landscape. It means we need to get smarter in business to understand if we want to have these people full-time in our organizations, or if we turn to partners and vendors who can help us adopt AI along the way. There's really a new balance of buy versus build as it relates to AI talent and technology. Now, the finance area, both finance and accounting, functional roles, and FP&A, have always been early adopters of new technology. With high volume transactions and truly the pulse of how an organization's financial health is doing, it's imperative that finance was always accurate, always on time, closed the books, and got the job done. It was a natural fit for automation. It was a natural fit for outsourcing in the 90s. So every time a new efficiency lever came on the scene, finance was one of the earlier adopters. And we're seeing that trend persist into the age of AI. Healthcare has always been an area where we've seen regulatory changes and compliance initiatives that they must adhere to because of patient sensitive data and privacy and different governing bodies that rule the way that healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and providers work. It's always been a little bit of a question mark, but we're now well into understanding that this technology is here to stay. It is governed and it can adhere to the compliance initiatives and regulations that healthcare has in store. So healthcare is certainly one of the adopters. We're seeing so many more efficiencies come into different practical applications, all the way from the hospital to your patient care providers, and even being able to administer the way that your insurance gets applied to the back office function within revenue cycle management of healthcare. And of course, retail. We've seen so many changes with big box retail moving to digital landscapes. We see ads across every single platform that we're on when we're on our cell phones. We see that there's more and more advertisers trying to understand and optimize the way that they do business with their individual clients as well as B2B. And so with that, retail continues to change. As supply chain becomes kind of an issue, something that we all need to look for and see how the landscape is changing from a macro perspective, it's even more important for retail organizations to look to adopt AI. And that doesn't mean just having their store clerks be AI literate and being able to do a point of sale. It's the back office and all of the mechanics that go in from distribution through all the way to even returns and reconciliations on the back end of purchases to make sure that those are all adhering to compliance standards as well. These are some of the early adopters. For the most part, we've seen these usual suspects adopt technology along the way. And with this fast pace, these are the ones that are really coming through with understanding that their job requirements have to change too. And the type of talent that they're procuring for these traditional roles might need a little bit of technical acumen as well. So how are organizations adapting? Where are you in the mix? Where is it that your organization is going? And how do you right size what it is that you're doing today? It's really about redefining the job descriptions. And today we have some examples of folks who have changed their job descriptions and also adopted AI in a meaningful way. There's a really important need to understand that AI is a thread that combines operations to finance and then back to HR to make sure that the recruiting and the retention strategies are on par for keeping up with this capability. We have internal training being asked again. I think there was a setback for a long time, and we saw with several analysts claiming that a lot of spend is on internal training, upskilling, understanding what the workforce is. For the first time in a long time, maybe ever, we have 5 generations in the workforce. at the same time, all adhering to the same mission and using different levers and different thoughts to put forward to making that operation run. So we're really seeing the importance of training, upskilling, and then really recruiting new talent to infuse that into the workforce of tomorrow. And then, of course, workforce planning. Our HR constituents and several of our buyers at Wonderbots are in the finance and accounting department, and they're working with HR more than ever. It is, after all, the largest line item on a balance sheet, human capital. So we have to keep our pulse on what it is that we're spending, what type of talent we need to bring in-house to make sure that competition stays up to date and that we stay competitive, and that we understand that the workforce planning of tomorrow includes succession planning like never before, and additional skills that might be a little outside of the traditional roles that we've seen in the past. So the future of work, it is in the AI era. We're going to continue to talk about augmented workspaces, hybrid human and AI intervention, continuous learning as we continue to promote these different items. And subsequently, and what we hope you take away today, is that it's really about reshaping the way that leadership and decision making is done so that we can all stay on board and make sure that we keep up with the next advent, because the only thing we can promise you is that change is always going to keep coming. All right, so thanks so much. It looks like a few more people trickled in. I'd like to invite my panelists to the spotlight, I believe it's called here. So we'll go ahead and get them sorted and introduce you to some of the folks that will be expanding on some of these items today. All right, Shaun, looks like you're up. I will go ahead and turn to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Paula. My name is Shaun Dawson. I'm part of the test product team at UiPath, and our vision is to reinvent the way that organizations do application testing. And that means that we need a warm embrace of all things AI and agentic. But I've been around the block a few times. I've built and scaled very large teams. And so I'm very excited to talk about how AI is going to impact the workforce today.
And we're so happy to have you here. Thanks so much, Shaun. So Lucian, thank you so much for joining. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Lucian Sirbu. I'm from INVOKE. We are very close partners with UiPath, so we work together on a lot of projects, but we try to go above just one technology. We try to work with companies in their digital transformation to help them design the future, figure out how they move from basic automated manual paper documents and turn all of that into a modern application, into a modern process, use AI, use APIs, use anything that would give us that ROI. The goal here is to make your company more lean so it can move faster and do more. And that can take different aspects. AI is the latest part of this, but over the last 20 years, we've seen a change drastically. I remember in university, we were just learning syntaxes for various programming languages. That's completely out the door. That went out the door once we had forums where you could search for problems to any issue you're dealing with. And now you can just ask ChatGPT, or you can ask a plugin directly into whatever programming language you have. You'll usually have some kind of LLM plugin that can help you build the syntaxes. So things are moving very rapidly, and we're trying to stay ahead and help organizations get to the top.
No, thank you so much, Lucian. And so I'm really excited because I have sort of this this general feedback from both of you, about how things have changed and what your experience has been personally, as well as what we've seen at all of our client sites. And I think we share that with our close partnership with one another. We're on the ground, so we have experience from both in the field, what analysts are saying, and some of these, sessions like this, where people are really starting to talk about how things are changing. So Lucian, I'm going to start off with you. You mentioned university, you've been in your career, you were just such a rock star and have been such a huge part of AI adoption at several of our client sites. So I wanted to start with just a very basic question, but I think a very important one. What would you say are the most valuable AI skills today?
That's a very good question, and there's a lot of answers to that question because it really depends how you split it apart. You can go very technical and say prompt engineering. Everyone talks about prompt engineering, you need to learn it. That is one aspect of interacting with the chatbots themselves to build something in LLM. But what goes behind that prompt engineering? Usually I would look one step back and say that curiosity is what drives that. Everything that we're doing right now only happens if you're curious enough to see what's possible. So when you're working with an LLM, you want to try different things yourself. If you just go and grab a course right now, you'll find 100 different courses online. You'll spend $100, try to learn a few examples of prompts that were working last year, and then use them today and see that you're not getting exactly the same results, and you'll be stuck in one lane. What we're trying to do is move away from that. So we want people to be flexible and curious to try different things. If you want to learn more about prompt engineering, use tools that allow you to build test cases for your prompts and see the different results, and then use different LLMs to see the results for them. So there's tools like Prometheus, for example, like Prometheus, but it's Prometheus. You can hook it into different LLMs and then just try out. I want these different things. I want a project where my LLM will first search the internet, gather some information, find the best flight, then look for those dates for a hotel, and generate a journey for me. That's out of the box, just a general idea. We'll try different ways of writing it and then connect it to different LLMs and see the results you're getting. So that's where the curiosity comes in, playing with the different tools, trying it out. I think that's the most important thing, because any skill you learn right now will be obsolete 8 months from now. So the only thing that remains is that curiosity to try different things. And interacting with the prompts, that's the first stage. If you want to go one step further behind that, it's any kind of programming language. Most people will tell you that programming is disappearing because LLMs are writing the code. That is half true. The LLMs will write pieces of code and they'll guide you, but you still need to be able to read it. So it doesn't really matter at this point which programming language, as long as it's something modern. Like, for example, Python. Everyone loves Python. There's a lot of integrations. If you want to learn Python, spend some time just learning the basics of it to the point where you can work with an LLM together to build an application. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to pass 4 years of university and all of that. You can, obviously, that's one career path, and it's very niche. You'll make a lot of money, you'll be very happy, but it's a lot of investment. The people here on this call, I think they just want to know the basics of it. So understanding the basics of what a variable is, how if conditions work, and then working with the LLM to generate pieces of code small enough that serve as a function in your day-to-day work. You can create small snippets of applications. There's a tool called Bolt that will actually create a web app for you, including the database, absolutely everything for you. Full web app, you can use it for yourself. It's not going to be polished, it's not client ready, but for something internal that you want to use, that's more than enough, and it will save you so much effort once you're moving away from something like Excel. Everyone is using Excel here, moving into a custom app that was built up by an LLM, and you have just enough knowledge of the programming that you can tell it, oh, I don't like this portion, change it to do something else, or troubleshoot when something breaks. Again, you're working with the LLM. You don't need to be the one driving it. You need to be the one with the vision. You need to be the one that's telling it which way to go, and then the LLM will find its way there. Sorry, I feel like I can ramble like this for quite a bit, so I'm going to stop here and give it back to Paula.
I love how passionate you are about that. And I think curiosity is such a fantastic answer, because I think it's so important that, that everybody understand this isn't something that everybody's an expert. In fact, I kind of shudder and stay away from folks that say, I'm an AI expert, because this is so new and it continues to change, as you said, and obsolete is pretty quick. So I think it's important to have those foundational understandings, and curiosity is going to get you far. Shaun, I'll turn to you, from the business side, because we definitely had some leadership, register for this webinar, operations leaders, finance leaders, a handful of HR, because I think they're kind of in that curious stage of, well, how do I find people like Lucian, or when do I partner with a company that is going to be a partner? What are you seeing of the mix of talent changes, along the way? 15, 20 years ago, detail oriented was like a line item on your resume. But now if you're not detail oriented, that goes without saying. You probably should have gotten some sort of tool to check your resume before you submitted it, right? So what are you seeing in the mix of changes in all of our client sites, Shaun, as all of these tools and all of these technologies come on the scene? What is the mix of talent that's changing?
Yeah, let me start with, I'll tell you something I'm not seeing. And what I'm not seeing are AI specific roles. So a year ago, I mean, we just talked a moment ago about how important the skill of prompt engineering is. And that's absolutely true. And a year ago, there were all these breathless posts on LinkedIn about how the prompt engineer is going to be the next most important job. And that's just not true, because what I am seeing is that AI is seeping in and infecting everything. You mentioned this notion about being an AI expert. This stuff, no, it's not been around long enough. We're not seeing the real business value in a lot of cases. And so nobody's an AI expert. If somebody's coming in claiming that they're an AI expert, you should be suspicious of that, because what that means is that they have all of this way that they think the world works that they're not going to be dissuaded from. They don't have the passion that Lucian has. They don't have the curiosity to go out and figure out what the new way of doing things is, because at the end of the story right now, everything's up for grabs. And the fact is that you can either, AI is coming to change everything, and you can either let it make you lazy, or you can let it make you, or it can make you 10 times as productive. And so one of the things that I would mention to leaders today is select for passion, for people who are getting outside the building, and actually using this stuff to create real live business value that impacts things, and not just kind of spinning our wheels doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff, but all right, what's the actual impact that this is going to have in our lives, in the business, in your jobs?
No, thank you so much for that, Shaun. And and I think I'm going to piggyback right back to you, because I think this sort of lends itself to talk about another topic kind of within the same vein of, while there are all these changes, and while it is important, some of the items that you mentioned there's still sort of this fear of, legacy workforce saying, maybe my job's going to be impacted. Or people coming up and rising and saying maybe prompt engineering is the next big wave, dive into that, and all of a sudden, there's no roles available for that skill set anymore. So how would you advise professionals today, both in the tech side and on the business side, how would you advise them to future-proof their careers in this very transient age of AI? And I love how you said seeping in. I always say infusion, but I think it's still a tea metaphor there. But I think that's what we're doing, is we're seeping in. So how would you advise some of the folks, to future-proof their careers, with such transient changes?
One of the things that I talk about, one of the tensions that I talk about a lot, is that it's very often the case that your biggest problem is also your biggest opportunity, and vice versa, right? AI is one of these situations. It represents an enormous problem for everybody, and it represents an enormous opportunity for everybody. And you get to decide which one of those things it's going to be for you. So I would say, be aware of the threat, but focus on the opportunities. Think about it this way. You've got to play defense. What would you do? What would you do if you were a hungry up-and-comer and you had set your sights on disrupting or stealing or eliminating your job? And be serious about that. Take it seriously. Imagine that you were 15 years younger and you were coming for Shaun. And anything that I'm able to think of, if I were to write it down, that stuff is happening. And it's either happening from people who are hungry in other countries, or people who are younger than I am, who are more passionate, or who are more aware of emerging technologies, all of that. Those things are happening. And so it's important to be aware from them. But you can also play offense. Think about the opportunities that are emerging for you. What jobs, roles, responsibilities are you able to disrupt? And so again, I would say, be aware of the threat, but focus on the opportunity, and then go out and nail that. The last thing I would mention about that is, we are inundated with information. We are inundated with, quote, facts and all sorts of stuff. And so you need to develop a world-class content filter. And that's because you need to be able to sort out what is true and what is hype. And at the end of the story, it all comes down to what's going to deliver the business value. And if you have this world-class content filter, that is a huge defense around, what's coming down.
I love the way you said that. So Lucian, back to you. What is your world-class content filter? What do you do to stay informed, up to date on today's changing landscape? So everybody loves a good practical nugget. So what do you read? What do you look at? What kind of learnings do you do? Tell us a little bit about how you've evolved your personal and professional stature in this.
I love the concept of the filter. For me, it's more of a open dam, like the flood is coming in. So staying connected on essentially any kind of social media related to any of these tools. So anything that comes out from Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, staying up to date with just whatever social media platform you want, they will post there for sure. Going on their official websites, they will post invites to webinars and trainings, and they will organize events themselves. So staying up to date with these big players is the first step. But the next one is just going through partners like Wonderbots, INVOKE, UiPath, seeing what they're releasing, because they'll usually take that tool and integrate it in their tools or other tools, or do something creative with it. So that's going the next step. Same thing, social media, anywhere you find us or any of these tools, connect with them, whatever your preferred method is. If you want to go even more in detail, there'll usually be things like Reddit forum posts. There's generative AI discussion and machine learning discussion. Usually that's where you go more into the weeds. So people will post the actual code. This is my bot that does this thing. Do you guys think it's cool? And you can actually download it, play with it, and interact with those people and see what ideas they have. So these will be all sorts of people, absolutely random. There's no curation. So you're going more into the forest and trying to explore things by yourself. And somewhere in between all of these will be things like YouTube, just looking at various content creators, podcasts. I personally like following podcasts wherever Satya from Microsoft shows up, or even Sam Altman from OpenAI. Like having a conversation with them, a 2-hour conversation. They were, for example, on Lex Friedman. If you have ever heard of the podcast, these are world-class leaders. They're driving AI, and they're talking for 2 hours about how they're approaching things, how they're thinking about the future. That will give you a nice insight. It's not too technical, but it does help you understand what the plan is, because that's the big problem right now. There's so much information out there that you end up getting blindsided. Like, well, what happened with DeepSeek? No one was paying attention to DeepSeek, and then suddenly everyone was surprised by it. So it's hard to keep up to date with everything, but I would say just keep your eyes open to these big ones, the big players, and then everything else will trickle out of that. And don't believe any course that says they'll train you in 10 minutes for $100. That's probably not.
That's really practical advice, Lucian. I'm sure several people thank you for saving them that $100. And I love that too. And I was going to add too, I forgot, but Reddit is another way to synthesize data. If you haven't ever used that, but it's like you can synthesize on it and then go research it, but there's definitely some great social media platforms that kind of aggregate these concepts for us today. And so Shaun, the other side of it too is because at the end of the day, we have the AI talent and the folks that are on the ground that, kind of roll up their sleeves and get the job done. But we also have the business buyers, right, that are thinking through, what they're going to do next, how do they do this? So what are some of the places where, our business leaders are going to learn more about AI and to learn more about what it is that they should be doing and how they should be thinking through a strategy, a budget, and adoption?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't want to toot our own horn here, but webinars like this, I think, are a tremendous place to get thought leadership, to get the juices flowing and start thinking about things. There are 2 adages that come to mind to me. The first is that we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And the second one is greatness is in the agency of others. What do those 2 things tell us? That tells us to get out there. There are zillions of webinars, podcasts, thought leadership. Again, it goes back to that content filter. How do I figure out of this fire hose of information? How do I figure out what I'm going to take in, and make sure that you're exposing yourself to knowledge outside your bubble and participate, right? the reason that webinars like this are so valuable is that you've got people like you, Paula, going out and finding disparate experts in all of these different subjects and bringing them together and having a discussion like that. And so that is a tremendously powerful tool to be able to get a lot of different viewpoints on an issue. And then from there, you can decide, oh, well, here's where I need to drill down.
No, I totally agree. And no, and thank you for that. And we do these monthly with a slight variance on what the topic is, right? So we did invoice processing, at the beginning of the year. Next month I think is supply chain. So the different topics within the application, I think starts giving everybody a little bit of context, because we have a lot of content, right? I think we're chock full of content on all of our feeds, but really getting the context and how does this apply to me is where adoption starts. And so it's really important that we get that out there. I completely agree. And thank you for being so willing to participate in these with us. UiPath is always so generous with time. All right, so Lucian, so in the same vein, we can talk about all the positives, right? We know that this is here. We know it's important to adopt. We know it's important to get some sort of a pilot. If you don't have a proof of concept in-house, you're already behind. We know all of that because we live and breathe this space, right? We do this all day, every day. But what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions about AI replacing jobs? When we're at job sites and we're advising our clients, on what's next, what is some of the hesitancy that you still see? Is that still there? And how do we mitigate that?
I would say it's the same conversation we had with automation, with robotic process automation, where people are afraid that they will be replaced by the bots. Just now, the bots are AI. In all my years working with clients, I've never actually had to fire someone, or the client themselves firing someone. The problem is never that. They never come to us with the concept of, I want to get rid of everyone. They come to us and say, I want to grow 10 times next year. How do I get there? I can't hire 10 times more people. First of all, it's not scalable. I need to train them. There's rotation, there's complexity, and then I also need to manage the people. It gets harder and harder to grow. Whereas introducing tools where each person in their own work, in their own role, they're still doing the same job, but they can do more using these tools, using automation, using AI. Now, they're not doing a very simple task repetitive over and over, and their eyes glaze over. They're doing more complex things where the repetitive things are already done and they're making decisions. They're talking with their clients. They're trying to grow their business and they're having a more active engagement in their jobs. And that's what we're seeing. People are not losing their jobs. They're transforming their own jobs. And it's not that someone comes in and tells you, now you have to do everything different. It's that you yourself in your own role are changing that role. You're driving innovation in your field. So everyone, the way you're interacting with that AI is how you improve your role. We're nowhere close to the point where you'll have robots walking into the office and firing everyone. No, these should be thought of as tools that improve you as a person, both in your personal life, the way you gather information and deal with problems, but also in your workspace. If a tool is brought by a colleague that does something that you used to do, that's not a problem. That's something that helps you do more. Now, some people don't want to do more. I get that concept as well. I've interacted with many different clients. At the end of the day, you are still valuable because you're a person. A robot cannot deal with decision making. A robot will see patterns and give you suggestions what to do. But you as a human know how to deal with your client who's always calling you because there's an issue with some delivery that always happens, and you have a personal relationship with them and you can get over that and continue that conversation and get their business continually. You know what happens, that once per year there's this exception where the system fails and you know where to go in and how to fix it. Those things will never be replaced by AI. That's where the human touch is still valuable. And I would say if you embrace it with an air of positivity, you will grow, your job will get better, it will transform, it will be something new, but it will be better. No matter what happens, it will always be better. But if you're afraid of it, you will always refuse to integrate with it. You will always fall behind. And over time, yes, you may be pushed out of your role. So we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to get people positive and open and integrated themselves, because if you're the one replacing your own role, well, you just won the game. AI can't beat you because you beat it. You created a new role by yourself.
No, well said. That's absolutely well said. And I think more and more what we're seeing, which is so exciting, is that these are less and less about back office and more about transforming the way that revenue is generated and the way that clients are being interacted with. And that's, that's revenue, that we're affecting at our client site. So, we really are seeing a lot more automation and AI for the sake of cost avoidance when we grow and when we get more clients than we are, because we have a finance and accounting team of 180, how do we slash that? Like that's less and less the conversation. I totally agree with you, Lucian. And so, Shaun, I'll turn to you. There's several benefits, as a result of this. I think what people fail to recognize, and you're in the testing space, is how many jobs are created as a result of AI and having some of these in. So there's been, a big change in the way that that automated testing is going to market. I think we're finally safe to announce that out loud. And what are you really seeing as far as some of those additional jobs that are being added as a result of AI, rather than kind of the naysayer view of my job is being eliminated?
Yeah, I think, just like you want to be aware of the threat, but you want to focus on the opportunity. That's a great way to think about it. And one of the things that I talk about a lot these days is that I think that we're in the midst of what I would call a software quality crisis. For example, I drive an electric car, and several years ago, I used to go out to my car and it will have updated itself overnight. And I would get in the car and I'd be so excited because it was almost like I had a brand new car. I had all these really cool new features and it was great. Nowadays, I get in and I groan because I know that the update has made my car demonstrably worse. And the same is true with my phones and my computer and all of those things. And so the software quality is declining in a lot of ways. And the problem is that the middle class of software quality is going away. And so we're seeing that a few players are just absolutely creating really, really, really high quality software still. And then everybody else is just going down into poverty and it's garbage. And so my passion project is automated testing. And there's a little bit of an arms race going on because, on the one hand, the tools that we use to test software are getting so powerful as a result of AI. So it really lowers the bar on what we can test automatically. And the more stuff we test automatically, the more kinds of things we can test automatically, like user experience and whether this version of the software is worse than the previous version, those sorts of things. But the other side of the arms race is that software is becoming so much harder to test because we've got AI infused applications that don't behave the same way over and over again if you execute them the exact same. And so there's this arms race that's happening in the quality space. And I think the thing that I would focus on is, how do I make sure that we're all software companies? Manufacturing companies are software companies. Restaurants are software companies. Everybody's got an app. Everybody's got a website. Everybody's got an online presence. And so that means that you need to make sure that you're in the top 10% of software quality. You absolutely have to do it. And if that means that you have to offer less stuff because the stuff that you offer has to be great, well, then do that.
Yep. No, and I think that consumers, even if they're not technically enabled in any capacity, have so much less patience for bad software applications
No question.
and user experiences.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah, our tolerance, across the board, generationally is pretty low for bad user experiences, bad chat interactions, bad, ability to get stuff done. So I agree with that completely. And so one of the things too that we were kind of, diving into, and some of the, the elements that came into the Gartner presentation that we started with was, just different places of how recruiting goes, and there's actually a question in the chat, and guys, if, that are still on the line, we have a couple of questions that came in. We have a couple of questions that were from the registration. So we'll get to those just momentarily. But as part of it, somebody asked here too, is, how do you find people, to hire AI talent? How do you advise, Shaun, your HR business partner on, what to do. Prompt engineer, for example, is no longer in the job description. So how do you ask for curiosity in a resume reviewer that's most likely reviewed by robots to begin with and extracted, for keywords? How do you advise HR partners to get more human about the type of humans that we need in this workforce?
Yeah, this is another one of my passion projects, and I'll tell you a little story. When the last time that I did a lot of hiring, I was looking at our hiring process, and basically it involved, candidate would come in, they would be screened by a recruiter and then presented to a number of people for interviews, and those interviews were happening in series. So I would interview the person and then decide, get the feedback back to the HR business partner, and then decide, okay, they get to go to the next round, and then the next round, and the next round. There were like 4 rounds. Well, as a result, we had a 4 or 5 week time that it took to hire to hire talent. There was, and they were just interviewing that entire time. So you might spend 6 weeks in that process. And it's easy to kind of lull yourself into a sense of complacency because it's a very, very loose labor market. There is a lot of talent on the market. But the fact is, and that might make you complacent, and that might make you think, oh, well, I'll throw something out there. I'll get lots and lots of applications, and it's easy. But the problem is that you're not going to find the best talent that way. And the best talent you're going to find by looking at the experience from the candidate perspective. And so what that would mean is, rather than having this in series situation, I actually challenged my team to say, what can I do to get this process from we first encounter a candidate to we have a go, no go decision on that client or on that candidate within 5 days? And that was tremendously challenging, but we did it, and we parallelized everything, and we did all of that. The second thing is, a vast majority of these positions end up getting filled not through direct applications, but through networking. And that is an opportunity and a problem for both sides of that market, for the candidate market and for the recruiting market. And, so I would just, everybody should be leveraging their networks and really take the time to develop a deep relationship with candidates that are going to be an unbelievably good fit. The last thing I'll mention is, in my opinion, team is everything. I've been part of functional teams. I've been part of dysfunctional teams. I've been part of really amazing teams that have accomplished amazing things in really short periods of time. And I've been parts of teams that labored for years without going anywhere. And the fact is that it almost doesn't matter what you're doing. The right team is going to excel at it. And the vice versa is also true. It almost doesn't matter what you're doing. The wrong team is going to suck. And so start from that focus. I want to make sure that I get the right team. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's the smartest and everybody's the most capable and all of that stuff. It means that it's the right team and that they work well together and that the culture is right and all of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's true of this age as well to use the term, as inhumane as this might sound, of fail fast. If it's not working, then cut the cord. If it's not the right strategy, then revisit. But I do love, making decisions quickly because it's fewer far between. We already saw some people, Lucian, everybody's trying to steal you on this webinar already. Maybe I shouldn't put you in front of everybody.
Sorry.
I'm going to rethink my strategy. Let me pivot on that. No, I'm just kidding. But talent like you, for example, where you have that comprehensive view of both the technology side, you understand how to explain it to clients, and you really help them understand how we become an extension of their team. You're in essence becoming an employee of many, right? And so there's several different, formats on, engagement, routes that we've tried. Some of them work. And again, I think it depends on the culture of the organization. It depends on how much they want to be autonomous. And it depends on if they want to have, training wheels to put on. So I think that segues nicely into my last question for you before we get into the official Q&A. Lucian, how are our clients staffing as they adopt this? What kind of levers are we taking when we're helping them adopt AI in their organizations? What are some of the different, operating models that you've seen successful, and what are we doing to help drive that adoption?
Sure. So there's a couple ways that things start. Usually you'll have someone that's curious inside of the organization that wants to do something, and they'll start playing with it, whether it's AI, RPA, any new tool that they want to integrate, and they'll test it in their own time. That's the visionary. That's the leader of the technology. Even if it's someone on the floor, someone that's doing the job that's paid minimum wage, he still wants to do more. So he's starting to bring these technologies in, and he'll build what we call a proof of concept. Now, at that stage, it might be something that they build internally, or they reach out to a third party, or they can reach out to UiPath directly to build a POC. They can reach out to us. And that concept now goes up to upper management for proposal. Hey, this is a way we think we can improve things in this very specific niche use case. So that's how things usually start. But that niche use case can be unfolded like an origami, and you open it up and you find, oh, this actually touches multiple systems, and this technology we're using can actually fit multiple things. So that becomes a bigger conversation. And if you try to drive it from your end, that means you have to dedicate people. Now you need new resources, where the existing resources need to be moved, and they need to go through their trainings and learn whatever tool you're adding, and get them upskilled. They will learn it fairly fast. Most tools, in a couple of months, you can learn them. It's not like you have to go to university, but they will always lack experience. It's the first time they're seeing every single situation is the very first time. And you might have the smartest people in the world, and they'll deal with it, and that's excellent. But you'll always be slightly behind because you're always dealing with things from the beginning. You're reinventing the wheel. So the model that usually works best is where you have some partnership with Wonderbots, INVOKE, or directly UiPath and other partners, where they would come in and help you, first of all, strategize. This is the direction. These are the things. We can help you train your staff, so we can do actual courses, but we can also help you build the things together, where there's a developer from your side, a developer from our side, and they're working together on a project. That way the experience that our staff has can be transferred to your staff much faster. Because think about it this way, I have 50 developers right now working across 5 different time zones with I don't know how many different clients, each one on a different version of UiPath, or a different tool, or a different LLM model, a different kind of document that we're working. Some of them are working with invoices, some of them with receipts. Sounds like the same thing, but there's nuance with each one. I can bring a person that works with that specific situation you're dealing with, and you can ask them questions. And that's the biggest superpower of working with a partner, that you can ask them specific questions, and you don't have to invest $1 million now in your partnership. You just need someone that has worked with whatever you're trying to fix, and have them on demand as experienced resource to ask questions. And then you train your resources internally, your people, to capture as much of that information and grow it. And so ideally, we want you to be independent. We want you to get to the point where your team has learned everything and you can drive it by yourselves. But in today's landscape where everything is changing, that is very difficult. So the most successful interactions we've had is where the client has their own center of excellence, they have their own automation team, and they're driving things, and they come to us with all of the new things. So Shaun comes up with a new tool as part of the test manager, where it's using AI to generate the test cases automatically based on the requirements document. Well, all the clients hear about it, they want to integrate it, but they don't know how. So I bring in 2 developers that have worked with this since the beginning. They've been insiders with UiPath, and they've seen the tool being built, and they've provided feedback to UiPath. There's been that back and forth, so they know how it works, and they can help train your team very quickly and set up a first project so you can see how it works, and then you scale it up yourselves. So we come in to do the setup and the direction, and then you scale up on your side. That's the success model we've seen.
Absolutely. And I think it's almost like training wheels, right? So we give them a little bit of an idea of training wheels. And then, over the years as well, we've seen that, some organizations don't want to pull away from their core competency. So if they're healthcare, they want to stay in healthcare, they don't want to have anything to do with automation or AI, and that's fine too. And I think that's where the advent of managed services has come into play too, because there is the option of, I just need the outcomes, and we're able to provide that as well, which has been just a tremendous uptick. So I'd love to, I'm going to put up these speakers. So in the spirit of networking, please connect with, with these folks here. I'm going to put this back up as we round out the Q&A section. There's a couple of questions that came in from the registrants. So feel free to QR code this if you're on your mobile phone. We'll send you the links to connect with everybody on LinkedIn afterwards as well. But if you're on your desktop, you just scan it. We all learned how QR codes work in 2020, I think. All right, so Shaun, I'm going to kick it off to you. One of these questions. So what can young professionals do to set themselves apart when looking to break into tech? So you as a hiring manager, what is it that you look for, and what would you recommend to young professionals as they're either in university, getting out of university, maybe even in high school, thinking about what they want to be when they grow up? What would you advise?
Yeah, I have an old business mentor that used to say to me, he said, and I had asked him a question about how do you select between somebody who has a lot of skills and capability in the space, they have a lot of knowledge, and versus somebody who just has a lot of passion. And the way that he responded, he says, you know what? You can't tie a rocket to someone's ass. And what he means by that is passion trumps everything. And especially in this day and age when things are changing so quickly that all of the stuff that we thought we knew about software engineering and development and everything about all of our jobs, that will be completely different 5 years from now. And so it doesn't do me any good to have somebody who's an expert in the way things used to work. It does me. What I need to do is find people who have that passion, and so that works on both. Again, that's on both sides of that recruiting market, and so that means as a recruit, as someone who's looking for opportunities, I need to develop my personal brand. I need to get out there. I need to be doing lots of things in this new universe to demonstrate that, oh, hey, listen, I can use AI to create business value, and here's how I do it, right? And on the recruiter side, you need to be looking for people like that. And don't forget, and like I said before, you need to have the kind of job and be the kind of environment where really great people want to come and work.
No, I think that's really important. I think setting up for a home for these college graduates to get out of, continuous learning candidates to come to is really, really important. And my answer to that in translating from my finance background is, I really started teaching CFOs and finance leaders earlier in my career how to adopt technology. And it was RPA, it was automation, it's now AI. And what I learned very quickly is that they're very used to having the technical proficiency of an FP&A analyst, of an Excel spreadsheet, of pivot tabling your way to a financial close. I say that all the time. And where I really began to differentiate myself before I didn't even, I didn't have the network of CFOs that I do today. Earlier in my career, I just began posting thoughts. And so on LinkedIn, I would, pose a thought and see something or share an article that I had, and it would generate conversation. And as conversation, begins, then you start to socialize. And as my network began to grow, I'm now who a lot of CFOs come to and say, hey, Paula, I saw a new thing. Like, what's the thing? Can I ask the dumb question? And you become kind of part of making that a safe space to ask questions as things continuously change. So I think that was a great question. And another one came up here in the Q&A, and Lucian, I'll direct this one towards you. Any thoughts on the balance between training existing team members of an organization so they can come up with new items to improve? They most likely know the process. I'm guessing that's where that's going, versus hiring new team members who have maybe the technical proficiency. How do you balance to make a world-class team?
I would say the main focus is the existing team. You want to upskill your team, because if you're going to hire new resources that know something new, then what are you going to do with the old ones? So my main focus is upskilling. I want to train all the people in the organization to be able to do more. That being said, they need to have someone to ask questions. So having a specialist in, if you're hiring someone that already knows the technology you want to implement, that will make it much easier than to scale throughout your organization. So you only need a small number of specialists and keep your existing team, but upskill them and make it official. The biggest problem I've seen is where companies say, we're ready to go digital. We're ready to learn this. We have 10 people ready to study UiPath. Say we're going to do courses together, it's going to be beautiful, and then those people are telling me that they spend 10 hours doing their regular work days and then they need to do training in their own personal time. That's not going to work. If you want to transform your organization, you need to allocate time. So this needs to be something that you're tracking. So you spend 4 hours, say 4 hours per week. Each person in a specific team spends learning a new tool, a new functionality, and then you make it something that is tied to their performance. So if you get your certification, or if you create a tool, by the end of the year, you'll have your KPIs go up and down. Making it official will make sure that you actually deliver something. Whereas if you leave it open, you'll get one person that does everything and he's super passionate, and everyone else that kind of fumbles around and tries different things, but nothing comes out of it. So it needs to be structured. You need to have 1 or 2 specialists that can answer questions, and everyone else just moving in that direction at their own pace and transforming their own roles. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer. And I love that. I think it is important to upskill, and I think it is important to adopt. And the tribal knowledge, let's not forget how valuable that is, right? And the documentation of how things in a current state are really give us the right answer on where we should be directionally headed in AI. So I certainly agree there. All right, gentlemen. Well, we are at the top of the hour. As with all of the webinars, I always like to ask our guests to share one nugget, one thing that if you want to leave the audience with, for them as a takeaway on today's topic. So, Shaun, I'll start with you.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. I think the one nugget that I would definitely want people to take away from here is that team is everything. If you have a great team, then it becomes easy to do things like upskill the current team instead of look outside, right? It becomes easy to adopt new technologies. It becomes easy to stay agile in the business. And if you have the wrong team, then it becomes impossible to do those things. So, and having the right team definitely involves having the right soil for that kind of team. You need to be the kind of place where great people want to come to work.
I think that's a great answer. I love that. I love all the metaphors today. We're so introspective. All right, Lucian, to you, what's the nugget you want to leave everybody with today?
I think I'm going to tie it back to the whole curiosity thing. What I usually say is that AI sounds great, but no one actually knows where to use it. Start using it randomly throughout your personal lives. Just interact with AI and every situation that comes up. I had a very interesting situation. I got a new car and there was a little symbol on the dashboard that I had no idea what it means. So I could maybe try Googling and finding out, maybe go to the dealership, ask them, or ask a friend that has a similar kind of car. I just took a picture with ChatGPT. I selected it and asked it, hey, what is this thing? And now I know my airbags didn't work. But the point is, ChatGPT actually can help you with anything in your day-to-day lives. And the more you interact with it, the more you'll think about new ways of interacting within your work. So try to separate this concept of it's not necessarily a tool for work. It's a tool to improve you as a person to do more. Once you start thinking about that way, it will be much easier to come up with new ideas because you're using it all the time.
Wow. Well, I don't think we could have ended on a better note, guys. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Everybody, you have access to Shaun and Lucian here on the screen, and we will be sending out the PowerPoint and invites to next month's webinar. So thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.